they got like one random 15-pound dumbbell and one 35, and then like that's it. Yeah, it's like you just, I don't know, you got some set from wherever the hell it came from, and it's not complete.
What's happening, y'all?
What's happening?
Nsima's been going in deep on those diet sodas.
I should have said anything about the Sunkist.
We got to talk about this. Okay, guys. So podcasts. We talk a lot about responsibility, and I have not been responsible with my soda intake of diet soda because 0 sugar, 0 calories ain't gonna do shit to you other than fuck up your stomach. I've been pooping black water for 2 days.
What's in those 0 sugar things? Like, is it sucralose?
So
it's tasty. That's what it is.
It's delicious, and I've been drinking them every day. So, like a diet soda will be sweetened with aspartame.
Give me all that aspartame.
And then like the zeros is sucralose. Aspartame. There it is. Sorry. See, I was like, I knew that.
I'm trying to think. I think that's a little.
I knew that was way off, but I'm like looking at it on the label, and I'm like, aspartame. Like it, I just like made shit up. But and then like Coke Zero is sweetened with sucralose, and that's been my jam. That stuff is so good.
Yeah, it looked like jam came out of my ass for 2 days.
Well, I don't know what
That's
else
what
you
it looks like.
mixed it with, sir.
It was, like I said, I was being irresponsible with my soda intake. I legit probably had a third of the bottle of the Diet Ginger Ale yesterday, along with another third of the Diet Sunkist. Okay, you see, like we make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
We're not perfect. Look at this. This isn't ideal. So
just black poop.
Black poop. It really is. Yeah. So that shit wrecked my gut.
Gotta be careful out there, kids.
Mm-hmm.
I've been running some experiments in my kitchen, and
Here we go.
I found out that out of all the different sweeteners, the one that tastes the best by itself is allulose.
Oh,
allulose tastes fucking delicious. Xylitol's not bad, stevia's not bad, but and even sucralose has like a little weird aftertaste, but it is extremely. Yeah, it's extremely fucking potent. It's really, really, really strong. But allulose, I don't know. To me, it tastes just like sugar.
Yeah, is allulose the one that gets cold, or
No.
Which one's that?
That's most of the other sugar alcohols. Erythritol.
Erythritol. There you go.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Any of the most of the talls have that cold
because
pop at the end.
Menthol.
Yeah,
okay.
they all have that. Yeah, they all have that little weird thing at the end.
Fucking Bill Nye over here.
Allulose though, that shit's good. That's what's in allulose is in the Hero Bar.
Oh,
okay. That makes sense.
Oh.
And do we not digest that one? Is that the one that just we pee straight out?
Comes right out of our body.
Yeah.
Right out your butt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes for me, yeah.
Yeah. It's a like a fiber, So you would have to use you got to be careful how much you use because I think it can hurt your stomach. But having a Hero Bar or two has never really bothered my stomach for me personally. I don't know about you guys.
If I have
Not me.
Yeah, if I have 2 in one day, which has happened, I'm backed up big time.
Backed up?
Yeah, having that much fiber, it will I will cramp up and I can't get anything out. Yeah, it's weird.
Ooh. Is that with a Quest bar or with the Hero Bar?
The Hero Bar specifically.
Yeah, I think it has. Yeah, I think it does.
That's the one.
I think it does have a good amount of fiber.
Yeah,
that shit doesn't get digested. You know what I mean?
It's rough. Yeah, I mean, it's rough on me, but I can have one, and it's freaking amazing. Yeah.
Y'all been eating a lot of meat though.
Lots.
Oh God.
Lots.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, yesterday,
some things never change.
Yesterday, I ate 4 of those Hop Dotty Piedmontese burgers. That shit's good.
Yeah. Told you.
That shit's where it's at. That was really good.
Those are good.
My kids were just watching in horror. They were like, "What's going on here?" Because I ate a package of the Piedmontese hot dogs as well. I stuffed them all.
I was gonna say, yeah, the kids are like, sick. We're getting Hop Dotty patties for dinner, and then they look around, and Mark's just smiling by himself in the corner.
Nothing's left. I had some salmon and some eggs too. I just ate everything. Ate everything in sight.
That's a lot of food.
It was impressive. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah. Those Hop Dotty patties, they're on H&L. They're incredible.
I have some in the fridge that are defrosted. I'm getting so excited to go cook tonight.
Yeah, I don't have any more left, unfortunately. Yeah, went too hard on them.
Their beef jerky is really good too, and their
biltong.
biltong, yeah.
Still haven't had the biltong, but I will try it.
I need to bring some in for you guys. I might even have some in my office.
Woo! Oh, that might be fun.
Go.
Yeah,
it's delicious.
Yeah. So I mean, we're friends with Piedmontese, but I mean, you just have to try it once. Oh, I was speaking to Robert Sykes, Keto Savage, Keto Brick.
Yeah.
He's like, you guys got me hooked. He's like, I can't, like, I know, right?
Game over.
There we go.
So I'm like, dude, okay. Like, there's something special about it, you know? Like, it's undeniable at this point.
Yeah.
And if you guys
grab yourself a chuck roast, throw that bitch in a slow cooker.
Yeah.
And throw some, like, vegetables or potatoes in there and some bone broth.
Wait.
It's fucking awesome. It's so good. Don't do it the standing rib roast, though, because Piedmontese people will be mad at you because it's very expensive.
Yeah. I know.
I didn't know. I was like, oh, this has a lot of fat on it. This is going to be great in here. And it was amazing. But they were like, you can't do that with that steak.
Yeah, Mark threw like a 5-pound ribeye in there.
I'm like, I don't know fancy stuff. I don't know what I'm doing.
It tasted good. That's all that matters, man.
That's all that matters.
Awesome. So right now I believe they are still doing it. Maybe it's over. Well, if you're listening and the Memorial Day sale is over, don't worry. We got your back. You're part of the Power Project crew. So head over to Piedmontese.com, Piedmontese.com. At checkout, enter promo code Power Project for 25% off your order. And if your order is $99 or more, you get free 2-day shipping. So, could have ordered Sunday night, you would have had it by today. Or what's today? Thursday? Wednesday? Thursday? I don't know what today is, but you would have had it. You would have had it already.
Yes.
So you could have been having that for dinner tonight. Again, Piedmontese.com, promo code Power Project for 25% off your order. And if you're not sure exactly what to start with, because there is a lot of different choices you can make, just hit up the Power Project Deluxe bundle. We decided on like a bunch of our favorite cuts, and that's really just like an amazing place to start because you can pick that, and then afterwards you can go ahead and make your own personalized, shipment box, whatever you want to call it.
We talk quite a bit on the show about getting lean and getting in good shape, and today we're going to shift gears just a little bit and not necessarily just talk about that aspect of it, but also just like what would be like healthy, Some of the practices that we have, I would say, maybe take it too far sometimes in terms of like your health. There's a risk of injury in a lot of the different things that we do. But I think in order to have a healthy body, you have to go through some sort of rigorous work. I think the human body is designed for that. I think we need to have rigorous work with our mind and rigorous work with our body frequently, probably nearly every day of some sort. Maybe it doesn't always have to be that difficult, but something kind of on a weekly basis at the very least that's fairly difficult to do. And I guess it's kind of hard to figure out exactly like what is like healthy. And we got into a text conversation the other day about like body fat percentages and what would be like a decent body fat for someone to live at to have a healthy life. And if they don't have any symptoms of anything and they feel pretty good and they're fairly happy, they may appear to everyone else to be a little thicker or to have a little extra junk in the trunk, but maybe everything's going good for them and they're okay with it. Also, the other side of things, and one thing that we get away with in powerlifting or just in strength training in general, or strongman type stuff, or even some of the CrossFitters, when you build muscle, one of the huge advantages of building muscle is that you have the ability to actually walk around with more fat on you. Yeah. But now we got to kind of still consider, okay, like what does that look like? How, would it be healthy to be 270? Like I don't know if we know all these answers, but this is what we're going to kind of go through on this day.
Yeah. Oh, shoot. There's so much there. The one thing that comes to mind though is like, for example, I think that, if you see that person that's a little bit thicker, let's say they're like 24 or 23% body fat, but they take some walks every day. They play some golf on the weekends. They get sun, they get good sleep, and all their health markers are okay. I think since a lot of listeners on this podcast are also kind of engulfed in fitness, or they're trying to be engulfed in fitness, you look at that person and be like, oh, they're so unhealthy, but they're really actually not. If they have a lot of these habits in line, they could live a great life and move well, all the way up until 80, 90 years old, right? But the fact, the rough thing about, I guess, fitness is that, yeah, we can take things a little bit too far. Let's look at bodybuilding as an example. I think bodybuilding and powerlifting, we'll get to that, but bodybuilding is a great example because you have all these people who are super focused on their nutrition and their health. They know how to manipulate their bodies in the craziest ways. But some individuals, they'll get super lean, their hormones will get all messed up. But because they're so attracted to this body and it looks strong and healthy and barely any body fat on it, everything on the inside is actually fucking them up. Like we've talked about the low testosterone during prep and the loss of libido. That can last for a long time if an individual decides to stick with that looking body. That's not healthy. And that's not something that you should do for long,
You can also be very fragile. You look at some other sports where your body weight is critical, something like horse racing or something like cycling. Those cyclists, they would rather be 2 to 3 pounds lighter than to be like more advanced in their training, because like it matters that much. Your body weight matters that much. They could spend a lot of time on trying to get better, but if they're just simply lighter, kind of like in powerlifting, you're simply just heavier. A lot of times you're able to lift more weight. However, when they fall, like you ever watch them fall, like in Tour de France and stuff like that, you're like, how come the guy's half dead? He fell going like 6 miles an hour around a corner. Sometimes they fall when they're going really fast.
Oh yeah.
But they're nearly dead because they're very fragile at that point, and then plus they probably already rode their bike, 100 miles or whatever, whatever the hell it is, in the most treacherous of situations. But their body is completely depleted, and we'll see the same thing when someone steps on stage for bodybuilding. It's like a lot of times bodybuilders are advised not to lift heavy, and even sometimes 2 weeks in advance. Really be cautious with your training sessions. Like lift really light, just get a pump, be really cautious. Don't exert a lot of extra energy doing a lot of extra things. You're either doing cardio or you're lifting. And then in terms of like you being able to perform anything else, like moving a couch or fucking or whatever it might be, those things are can be more difficult because you stressed your body out so much. There are people that are naturally just very, very lean, and they can be more okay at those lower percentage of body fat. But if you chopped your body fat in half, you're probably not going to feel so great.
Yeah, there's that. And then like, what happened last year with everything. It's like, what's your immune system like when you are, shredding everything and everything's depleted? Something that, I never really thought about, but then like I caught a cold when I was trying to lean out, and it's like, oh my gosh, like I just totally felt like I got run over.
So many people right now are like, every time I go on a diet, I get sick. I know a lot of people, it's happened.
Absolutely.
That's happened to me in the past when I was, trying to lose weight. As soon as I was like allergic to trying to be healthy. I'm like, oh my God, I'm this fat. Like this is,
oh no.
I'm like, this is terrible.
That's a great excuse though.
Oh man, every time I try to shift, I was like 1 week in and I'm like, and when you're sick, you're like, the last thing you want to eat is like stuff that's on your diet plan. Yeah. You're like, I just need to drink some fucking orange juice and have some soup or something,
Yeah, that's a really good point though, Andrew. Like, first off, when you get super lean, because you're always in a deficit, your body's always trying to work hard to use what it's got. Your immune system's put under stress. Add working out into the mix, so you're stressing out your body even more. You're gonna, it is a way to weaken your immune system and potentially get really, really sick. I know a lot of bodybuilders who had really bad sicknesses during their prep because they were so fragile. It puts you in such a fragile state, and that's not a good thing. I wonder, like, sports like powerlifting and bodybuilding, I know we've had this talk where, like, if you want to be elite of elite, there is some things you got to put yourself through to be the best. There is no balance. But can top level powerlifters, can top level bodybuilders figure out a way to marry the idea of still actually being a healthy athlete along with an extremely high performance athlete? I don't think those two should be mutually exclusive.
it's rare that you see it, and sometimes when you do see it, that person's personality is dialed back, so they don't get the same recognition as like back when the Lillibridges were just dominating powerlifting, especially Eric Lillibridge with the weights that he was doing, and we had a lot of other great athletes kind of following in his footsteps. They would lift heavy like every other week, and every time they would lift, they would go completely bonkers. They'd go crazy, headbutt the bar, and I remember actually Eric. Every time he squatted, nearly every time he hit a big squat, he would pass out afterwards.
Oh,
he would take like a step forward, and they would just be there with their arms out, like ready to catch him.
Yo.
He would take a half step forward out of the rack. Remember, if you remember watching him, he would slam the weight down on the rack, and then he'd go to like walk forward, and he would just go lights out.
Yeah.
Jeez. Can you get stronger without doing that? Like, we know that you can, but usually those people don't get the same recognition. The slow and steady people, maybe somebody like a Bryce Lewis who built up a crazy amount of. I mean, that guy.
He's chipping away.
Oh man, was he chipping away? Like, he chipped away forever. Like until he deadlifted like 800 pounds, and it was like, I never saw that coming from him. He was very talented, very, very strong guy.
Dennis Cornelius is another example of that.
Yeah.
If you look at Dennis Cornelius, like his training log over the years, he is a very large man, but he does jujitsu. He moves well. You can tell he's been in this for a long time, and he's super healthy, it seems.
Didn't he call you out?
He called me out. I laughed at it. Ha ha, Dennis. Sure. But he's a super healthy individual. Like, he's a great example of that.
He's a big boy, and when he does make his lifts, the lifts are done fairly easy.
Flawless.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think that, there's a lot to be learned from that, but I think a lot of people just know what they see on IG, and they get hyped up, they get excited, they want to be the next Larry Wheels.
Mm-hmm.
Larry Wheels has done, amazing stuff, and he's done really well for himself as well, but he's also like torn a lot of shit. He's probably like, what is he, like 26 or 25?
Yeah, it's like 25, 26.
He's super young, and I think he's torn a bunch of stuff, and he's like screwed himself up a bunch, and
he's still lifting savage ass weights.
Yeah,
though.
Yeah. It's still he can.
It's still wild, but yeah, he has torn quite a few muscle groups.
Yeah, he's. But anyway, there's just a sacrifice to being that way. If you want to be that way, there's kind of a certain sacrifice that goes along with having that mindset and wanting to lift that way and wanting to kind of like put it on the line all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You hit the nail on the head though at the beginning of what you said, because I think you said something about like with trying to be at the top. There's a lot of athletes who just try to blaze through, like instead of chipping away, because Bryce Lewis, Dennis Cornelius, they've had long careers. They've been chipping away for years. It never seems that their training has been crazy, where it's like they shouldn't have done something and then they hurt themselves, or they sacrifice their health, right? But like I don't think there's a problem mentioning this, because he mentioned it was part of his career. Was it the RPR guy?
Cal Dietz.
Oh, not on RPR. The other one with the Hulk tattoo.
Yeah. JL Holdsworth.
Holdsworth said that he went out in a blaze of glory, because he's an example. He even said he went so hard, and every training session was so crazy. He got to a very high strength level. It seems pretty quick, but because he kept that, he was also out of the game pretty quick too. And if he was able to just chip away, maybe potentially pay more attention to health, went about training, he could have done even crazier things than what you've seen him do.
I think Ed Cohn did it really, really well. He did end up with a hip replacement surgery. I don't know, like, it's impossible to know whether he would have one, whether he lifted weights or not. Maybe he, I would imagine that he compounded that by squatting 1,000 pounds. But Ed was very healthy throughout his career, and all he ever did was get stronger from the time he was a teenager until he fell. His knee snapped in a competition, Mountaineer Cup, that he was in with a lot of other great lifters. But from that point on, he was a little different. He could still lift heavy stuff, and he could still beat everybody because he's a seasoned lifter, and he just he knew what it kind of took.
Mhm.
But he had a long career where he did exactly what we're talking about, where he paced himself. That lift that he tried to do in that particular meet, that wasn't necessarily like more weight than he's ever handled before. It wasn't like him. It wasn't him rolling the dice. He wasn't living on the edge. I believe it was like a second attempt. And, maybe at the time, maybe he could look back and say, hey, you know what, at that year I competed too much, or, there could have been some contributing factors to it. But I'd also say, hey, look, if you squat often enough, something's probably going to happen at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're watching the video on this one's terrifying.
Yeah, this is a bad one,
Yeah.
especially with a friend.
Oh my
He's
gosh.
just so fucking strong. It just doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense at all. Yeah.
And it's just a flat out ACL tear. It wasn't just, it wasn't particularly anything that didn't look like there's anything wrong with the setup. It just, that knee was worn out at that particular point.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting because you can be a person that, rolls the dice all the time and you can end up getting hurt, or you can be where Ed was, where he seemed to be. Maybe he has a story behind that particular injury. It'd be a good question to ask him, but or you can be someone like Ed Cohn, who was always really mindful of every time that you're going to hit a new lift, your body has to be prepared for what you're about to do every single time. But not only be prepared for it, but be prepared for that weight and then some, so that you can avoid some of these injuries.
Not all injuries are like, yeah, you're right, man. I mean, not all injuries are avoidable. A person could be doing all the right things like Ed, and that still happens. But like you mentioned, he had a long, successful career before that happened because he was pacing himself. And that's what I think a lot of people should think about, because the pacing oneself is a very difficult thing to do, because you want that, you have that goal and you want to get there as fast as possible. So to purposefully slow yourself down from that goal, sometimes makes you think that you're not doing enough, or makes you think that you're failing. An example I have of this is like, for example, my fat loss, right? Where my body is right now is not very far away. Actually, with the physique I have right now, in my last contest prep in 2015, this would have been like, I stepped on stage at my current body weight, or at my current body composition. And at that time, when I had this body composition, that's the time that I felt like I had a low libido.
Right.
That's the time that my testosterone was super low. That's when that was happening.
You got there a different way.
I had to get like, I first off prepped for however 40 something weeks, but I rushed. Like, a prep is rushing yourself towards a body fat. It's not that you're just naturally getting there. You're purposely putting yourself in a caloric deficit over weeks and weeks and weeks, right? And you're like, to get there. Yeah, 40 weeks seems like a long time, but I think because the reason why I feel good now is because I have this body right now because of very gradual and non-forced fat loss. Like, if you go through my Instagram, I don't want to talk too long about this, but if you go through my Instagram and you look like just through the past years, 2020, 19, 18, 17, right? You'll see that I was like, there were times where I was 250 to 255 with higher body fat. Then I was 250 to 255 and my body fat got lower. Then I was 240 to 245 to 250. Then 245 to 250 and leaner. Then 240 to 245 leaner. And I don't feel bad, because what I am right now literally took me 3.5 to 4 years to do.
Right.
And I wasn't forcing it, right? So I think that's a big thing with athletics. You could either try to get there super fast. Yeah, see, that's when I was 275 and you were 3 something. Yeah, that's wild. That's wild. But you could get to a 500-pound deadlift, if you do a really hard 24 week training cycle and you really head for it. But if you gave yourself more months or more time to get there, you might get there with less banging yourself up, less overall fatigue, body feeling better. It's like, can we get our minds in that zone?
What I see people doing is they're chipping away their calories each day, right? So let's say you're kind of being a little innocent about it and you're not doing anything too crazy, and you just pull 200 calories off the top. You're like, I'm going to, get in a little bit of a caloric deficit, pretty normal. but I'm going to exercise a little bit more and I'm going to expend an additional 200 calories. Well, now we're talking about 400 calories. Well, you have some decent results that way and you start to lose a little bit of weight. But if you're in any sort of prep, you're always in a rush. So you're like, man, this does not look right. I don't like where this is going. Let me pull off about 400 calories a day and see what that looks like. And you're not even paying attention that it's per day. You know, your body doesn't really work that way necessarily per day. It's kind of overall over the weeks, the months of the preparation. It's the total caloric deficit that you would be in for the entire prep would probably represent or be a good representation of your fat loss. So you're pulling more and more calories off. You're like, I need to do a little bit more cardio. So now you're burning more calories doing the cardio. And before you know it, you're pulling off 600 calories off the top. You're expending a little bit more energy doing some other things, all the while not paying any attention to the fact that you're not getting proper sleep. And the sleep is going to be like, you know, we harp on it here all the time. We talk about it all the time. But you're really at a huge disadvantage because if you're not sleeping well, it's going to create a lot of imbalances that are going to potentially, they're not going to completely work against you. You know, your body's not going to, you know, you hear sometimes people are like, you hold on to more body fat. When I don't know if it does that necessarily. Like, I think if you're in a caloric deficit and you're working your face off, your body will continue to lose weight. Yeah. However, it might slow it down a bit. However, it might make you feel like shit. It might make the process harder. It's going to make, I mean, I'm not one for much research, but listening to Matthew Walker's stuff, where he pulls out all kinds of research, he says there's indications that people even choose different colors of food in accordance to how well they slept and how much they slept. So your cravings for weird shit, kind of like a pregnant lady might get here and there, you kind of get out of control with your cravings when you're sleep deprived. You're like, holy fuck, man, I haven't had some Fritos in a long ass time. You know, all of a sudden these things start trickling in. You're like, man, a Big Mac sounds really fucking good right now. And all these things trickle in. And a bodybuilder, most likely they're not going to fall for that. But are they going to throw a little extra peanut butter in their oatmeal? Are they going to, right?
That's me.
That's me.
Are they going to take like little advantages, which are disadvantages in the long run? You know, they take little liberties here and there throughout the day. Of course they are. And you're not going to look nearly as good on stage as you should have. I've even heard of people just having a really poor night of sleep the night before a bodybuilding show. And they come out and their coach is like, what happened? Did you, you know? And they're like, no, I swear I didn't do anything.
Your body holds on to more water.
Yeah.
When you get lax, like that's happened to you, right? Where you've gotten a really good night of sleep. You wake up, look in the mirror like, oh shit, where'd this, right?
Yeah.
You know.
No, I know.
You know.
Sure. and I unfortunately know the opposite because before, you know, the 2 photo shoots that I've done, I have not got good sleep. Like the last one, I like didn't sleep at all, and I just remember like come on, like no, like you'll be fine. And I woke up and just be like, bleh.
Did the peak not work?
Yeah, like I look horrible. You know, I look back and I look great, but like in that moment, you know, I'm like, oh, what's the point of all this bullshit dieting and cardio and like
it could have been. Could have been 2-3 days earlier that you were 3 or 4 pounds lighter. That could make a huge difference.
Yeah.
I actually lost 6 pounds. I was training with O'Hearn, training super early in the morning. And I sent Stan like a text at like 9 o'clock at night. And Stan does the math, you know, and he's like, you're not sleeping. He's like, this is all bullshit. He's like, he's like, you need to get to bed. He's like, if you're training at 4 in the morning, you know, he tells me when I need to go to bed and stuff like that. And so I was like, I get it. You're fucking right. So I started working on getting to bed about 2 hours earlier. And when I did, I sent him like a picture the next day and I was like, hey, I'm like 6 pounds lighter just from fucking sleeping longer after. Oh, it was probably like 2-3 days later.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm fucking 6 pounds lighter. Like that's a huge shift.
Yeah.
And then I stayed that way just as long as I was getting my sleep, getting my sleep in. But when you're going to get sleep deprived by pulling that many calories away from yourself. So you're better off like, maybe Nsima's been in like, I don't know, maintenance or slight just a tiny deficit.
Tiny.
Kind of like if you were like stealing sand from the beach. Like no one would notice, and you're stealing sand from the beach in like little buckets, right? It's like no.
That's actually an amazing metaphor for that, because
Somebody wouldn't go down to the beach and be like, "Holy fuck, man! Somebody's stealing 2 buckets of sand every day."
Yeah, exactly. Because that's the thing. It's like over the years, I've gone like there have been like a few days I'll be eating lower calories. 2 or 3 days I'll be eating higher calories. A few days I'll be eating lower, and that's how it goes, because like I kind of go based on how my weight's looking and how my appetite's looking. But it was never like, okay, these next 4 weeks I'm in a caloric deficit. No, that hasn't happened. But it was a slow loss over 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, and you would know like if you just ate a little extra, ate off plan,
And
2 or 3 days, right?
And I would know if I ate too little, because I'd start to actually feel weak. Like I'd start to feel, ooh, I'm a little fragile. Like, ooh, I feel kind of light.
Oh, you mentioned that before, yeah.
Yeah, I need to actually eat a little bit more. Like when you start to feel bad, then you have to eat more. You start to feel better again.
Is it your grandma, right? She's always real worried about.
My grandma's always trying to fatten me up, man. She
I love
still
that.
is.
That's their job,
She
yeah.
still thinks I'm skinny.
That's
Wow.
great. She thinks you look like shit.
Yeah, that's amazing.
She's like, why is he all strung out?
Like, don't you see your cousins? They're all giants.
She doesn't
Like,
think it's
why are
healthy
you-
for people to see my veins.
That's
She's
great.
like, that's unhealthy.
She's probably not wrong. But what I was gonna say is like your slight deficit though probably isn't coming from your actual food. It's probably just coming from like the volume and how active you are.
Jiu-jitsu, yeah, that definitely does help.
And I bet that's probably better in the long run, right? Because you still get to eat, what you want.
Yeah,
As far as amounts, sorry, not,
as far
not
as-
like cake.
yeah. As far as amounts, yeah, like being able to have that type of caloric expenditure that I enjoy, like I do need to eat extra food to be able to maintain my performance. So that's why it's really good. Now, if you're an athlete that works out in the gym and that's your main thing and you don't do anything really, like, yeah, you have to probably manipulate your food a little bit more. But you can always do we've talked about weight training circuit type exercises with kettlebells and dumbbells.
Yeah.
You can get in great cardiovascular expenditure for 20 minutes, and that won't affect your strength.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And you could literally do just about anything you could think of in between an exercise. I mean, you can do a set of curls and then do a set of just kind of stationary lunges, and it doesn't. I think it would be helpful for a lot of people to get their mind out of like it's leg day, it's shoulder day. There's nothing wrong with those training protocols. Those training protocols are fantastic. But I think if you're thinking about weight loss and body transformation, I think it might be more useful to think, I'm just going to go in there and like burn it up a bunch. I'm going to still train for hypertrophy. I'm still going to follow a lot of the principles that are associated with that. I'm going to utilize good form and good technique. I'm not going to lift like I'm in a panic. I'm not going to lift 1,000 miles an hour. I'm going to lift the weights under control. But each set, I'm going to go up in weight and find something that challenges me, that challenges your form, that gets your form to be kind of brush up against being borderline, right? And then in combination with that, throw something in between the exercises. It doesn't necessarily have to be leg workout that you're doing in between, but biceps, triceps, back and forth. I mean, you're going to get a lot more work done in a condensed period of time. And I just think it's a way to kind of keep that heart rate elevated. I mean, yesterday I did this separately. I pulled the sled first. It was just more convenient to do it this way. I pulled the sled first for about 12 minutes, 15 minutes, forward, backwards, with my brother. And then we moved into a shoulder workout where he went and I went, he went and I went. And we started supersetting some like the rear delt machine that we now have in the gym and some regular like side lateral raises.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, it got to be challenging. Like we just kept going back and forth and back and forth, back and forth. Heart rate's elevated the whole time. I mean, we're getting multiple benefits going, in my opinion, all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
That's the big thing. I think that we no matter if you're just a bodybuilder trying to build some muscle, or a powerlifter who's trying to get stronger in their lifts, we need to, and even if you're competitive, there is still space for you to have an element of element of conditioning to your training that's going to allow your heart to like can allow you to have a better heart,
Yeah.
to pump better, for more endurance, which leads to better recovery. We talked about this. And there's also always an ability to do things within ranges of motion, so that as a powerlifter, you're not stuck moving like this all the time. You actually have some mobility. And I'm not talking about static stretching or anything, but I'm talking about on maybe some of your accessory movements. And this is why I think this cannot hurt a powerlifter or an elite powerlifter. On some of your accessory movements, if you choose to do, let's say you want to do a leg press, right? Say you just choose to do that. But you go full range of motion with slightly lighter load. You come all the way down here. This is the thing. If you're already training your squat to a certain range every training session, your body knows that range of motion. Just because you become more mobile doesn't mean your body is now going to enter that range. Your body just has the ability to enter that range. But you've been training so much within this squatting form with your heavy weight that being more mobile will not make you a worse athlete. It'll just give you better movement in daily life.
Yeah. And if you start to try to move in some of those range of motions and something hurts, one, you might need to warm up a little bit more, but also that's not great. That's just not a great position to be in. You need to figure out, like, it's a good thing to investigate. I mean, sometimes for some people, I'd also say choose a different exercise, because sometimes it's just not worth it. So if you're thinking, man, the leg press always hurts my back, or I do think that people know themselves better than they give themselves credit for. If something does bother you kind of all the time, there's no law that says you have to do a hack squat. There's no law that says you have to do a leg extension. So I just really wouldn't sweat it, and I'd find something else that you can do. But I agree 100% is, hit some good ranges of motion, and that could be your goal in between doing like a main workout or a main exercise. The biceps and triceps you're going back and forth with. Your main goal for the day on your squats that you do in between is to get full range of motion on your squats, and you're just doing body weight squats. You don't even have to have any weight. Maybe on a day when you're training your legs, maybe then you go back and train your squat differently, and you have a barbell on your back and you're training heavier and you're squatting off a box or whatever it might be. But at least you're still attacking all these different angles, and you're getting multiple benefits by going back and forth between some of these exercises.
Yesterday I was doing the knees over toes, got like using the slant board with squats. And my goal with my squats yesterday was to be comfortable with like my hamstrings touching like the back of my calves, and just kind of sitting there and breathing there, right? If I were to squat with heavier weight, I'm not going to squat that deep. But having that weighted mobility and being strong in that position can be something that a powerlifter does with 135 pounds or 95 pounds. See, if you don't like to stretch, which you don't have to like to stretch, you can always use load to push you into that range of motion. And that, because you're going to be then coming up and resisting that load, you're now going to be strong through that range of motion. It's not just you've stretched a muscle, it's now you have moved it through ranges with resistance, which is really good as an athlete. That can give you a lot of longevity. That could be, people like to say that stretching doesn't really prevent injury. That can be something that actually does help prevent injury.
I think it helps a lot. And I think, people a lot of times we just get caught up in like thinking about that end result. We're just thinking about the weight that we're going to do in the gym. And, when it comes to, people trying to be as healthy as possible, when it comes to people sometimes talking about like longevity and expanding their life, and you hear Joe Rogan and some people talking about, wanting to live, to be 100 or these things. But I think there is a slight difference between, increasing your lifespan and increasing your health span. I think ultimately what we're all after is not necessarily living like a long, not the longest life. We want to live the healthiest life. And that way we still have, fully functioning brain. We don't have Alzheimer's or dementia. We don't have type 2 diabetes. We don't have heart disease. We're not suffering with some sort of illness or disease. We've built our body up strong enough to where it can potentially, there's no guarantees, but potentially fight some of these things off. And I don't know what that looks like. I don't know usually the people that live like long, the people that live, into their hundreds, when you see them on TV, they're usually very small. They're usually very, very like little. Like I wonder, like even just someone that's like 6'6" or 6'8", like how long, like I don't see a lot of guys that are 80 that are 6'8". I don't see a lot of guys.
Russell alive.
I don't see a lot of guys that are. He might be. I don't see a lot of guys that are, 300 or 400 pounds that are in their 80s and 90s. I mean, I guess you don't see that many 80 and 90-year-olds anyway, but it seems to be kind of rare. So I just even wonder, like, just being a larger person, if that's just more stressful on your body. But if you are a larger person, maybe exercising and nutrition can help you kind of fight off just the fact that you're a little bit bigger.
Dude, that's money right there. Think about that, because number one, the whole lifting culture really kind of became a thing in the 20s, 30s, really in like the 50s, 60s with like gyms and stuff. Now, it makes sense that shorter and smaller people do live longer outside of said lifting culture because of gravity and the stress that it has on like an individual's body. The taller you are, the more larger bones you have. When you start to, if you don't lift, right, you don't tone your muscles so they can carry your joints around, gravity is going to do this to that big ass spine and your knees and your hips, right? And it's going to have more stress on your bigger body than it does for this small, tiny person who's close to the ground. But with the advent of lifting culture and weightlifting, individuals that are big can now train their muscles to better take advantage and better move their frame. And I truly think, obviously, with like nutritional habits, all the things we know about sleep, all the things we know about better lifestyle and how it can have an effect on your health, I think that we're going to be starting to see more 80, 90 centennials that are big humans because we now know how to take care of that bigger structure. And taking care of a smaller structure is just easier.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's been plenty of, we'll say statistics. I don't know exactly about studies, but, if you have weak legs, you're a lot easier to,
Fall.
I mean, if you have strong legs, you're harder to kill. And it's as simple as if you start to fall, you have legs that can support you.
Right.
Versus the opposite. And then you fall. And like, I mean, that's a thing, like you have instructions when an old person falls. Like, I mean, shit, that commercial with the lady that falls.
I'm falling, I can't get up.
I can't get up. Yeah. So
Life
like
alert.
Yep. Yeah. That's there because they're not strong enough to hit a body weight squat.
Yeah.
A couple reps.
Yeah. And I guess the idea there is that they fall and they get hurt,
Mhm.
and then they get hurt, they get hospitalized, and then they can't recover because they're just, as we kind of pointed out earlier with the cyclist, or at that point, or bodybuilder that's on stage, are kind of fragile. You're open to getting hurt. I think stress in general is an interesting thing because, like, if you were simply just trying to live the longest and healthiest life, it's really hard to figure out what would be all the right stuff to do. But I think mostly it would be good not to ever, and this would be really hard, or to really avoid ever like agitating somebody or ever having weird vibes with anybody else, because all those things they add stress. And I'm a kind of a believer that these things will kind of like live inside your body. The other thing that would be interesting to know is, like, what about people that are, quote unquote high performers, people that perform on another level? I don't imagine that they get to live to be super, to live super long, but maybe they do. It would be interesting to see like how long, Michael Jordan lives, or it's going to be interesting to see how long some of these people that have been great in our lifetime, how long they're going to be able to live.
I think it's hard because if you look at Michael Jordan, I mean, this is unfair. But Michael Jordan, as an NBA player, looks a certain way. Retired Michael Jordan looks a different way.
Has those orange eyes.
And, he's put on some body fat and stuff. So is he still, a high performer in that, or is he now just kind of more...
What I meant was the ability to play the game at such a high level for so long.
Got it.
Like, what, like, is that going to kill him? Like, is it like smoking cigarettes? Is it going to...
Did it take away more than...
It's got to take away something, I would imagine, but maybe it doesn't.
I have
but yeah, he would have to have healthy practices afterwards as well. You're right.
Yeah.
Likes to smoke and drink. So.
Right? Look at Dennis Rodman. Look at it. Like
He's
how
gonna
much
live forever.
See, I think okay. So there are some people.
You can't kill the worm.
Bruh, there are some people who are built different. Like
Yeah.
Dennis Rodman, like he'd go party, come back, no sleep, come fuck everybody up and run around the court faster than everybody, and then go do a game. Dennis Rodman is built different. And this is the thing. This is what I'm thinking here. It's like you've seen those people too, that you see them do a lift a certain way, and you're like, my back would be shot up in so many different spots if I attempted to squat what you're doing, even with the lightest weight. But you're doing that with 700 pounds.
Right.
There's some people who are built different. But I also do think that we can pay attention to like the guy like LeBron, because yes, LeBron is a physical specimen, but from what we can see, LeBron isn't out drinking and partying and stuff. We don't have $1.5 million to spend on our body, but he is spending that type of money on his body. And the reason why he's been able to break so many NBA records isn't just because he's such a good basketball player, but because he's been able to be in the NBA for a long enough time to do it. You know,
right?
Like if he wasn't taking care of himself and he was out by the age of 33, he still would have some records, but he wouldn't have beat Kobe's scoring record. He wouldn't have beat the assist record. It's just because of his longevity within the sport, and he's still going strong. But think about this. I don't expect LeBron to stop taking care of himself after. I think that's going to be some 95-year-old, like 6'8" beast that you're going to see, because he's taken the long approach to his game. Like there were seasons where he purposefully sat out of games because he's like, I don't need to play right now. People got pissed at him, but he's like, I'm good. I'm gonna play the long game here.
Yeah, right, and he's also exponentially so much better that.
Yeah,
I guess it's kind of a bad example, but you guys see what I'm going for here.
Yep, absolutely.
See what I'm going for.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of bring it back around to that text thread that we had going on. Put myself and my family on blast, and this is what like started it all. But we had a family gathering, and on a scale of 1 to 10, as far as like happy foods, like the foods that were available was like a fucking million, you know. And I was just looking at it, and the reason why I put myself on blast, because I wasn't like kind of hanging out. I was more like looking at the food and looking at the people around me, and I'm just like, man, like we're eating this before we actually even eat like the meal.
Can you tell some people what those foods were?
Just think of the best chips and the best candies you can think of.
Yeah.
And you know, kind of just like we were, you know, just going through them all. And I'm just like, man, like this sucks. Like, you know, and I text you guys because I needed to vent, because I'm like, hey, am I like a bad person for like viewing it this way? Like, why can't I just like enjoy this sort of like, you know, just time, instead of kind of taking a step back and being like just being judgmental. Like, let's be real. That's what I was doing. Obviously nobody killed over and had a heart attack because of, you know, they had a couple of chips, but that's what kind of drove the conversation to like, okay, like what if, you know, they either lost a couple pounds here and there, or let's even, you know, take it a step further and be like, what is like an ideal, healthy, balanced body fat percentage that could be obtainable by, you know, basically anybody, to where they'd be healthier and they don't have to necessarily, you know, go vegan or go carnivore. Like they don't have to be a super restrictive eater. More intuitive, of course, but like, what does that look like? And I think, you know, we could probably share what that information is, because I think a lot of people, they heard you guys talking about powerlifters, Ed Cohn, LeBron, Kobe, Jordan, and it's like, well, I'm not that.
Yeah.
I'm more closer to 40% body fat than I am 20%, or whatever that range is going to be. Therefore, since I'm not an athlete, I'm just not going to bother. I'm just going to keep eating and living the way I am. But I think we all came to the conclusion that it's like, well, I mean, if you drop maybe 5%, what does that look like? And how much more like the health benefits in that are gigantic, and they're bigger than what people I think are assuming.
You got to keep in mind, you know, the people that live the longest on this planet are women, and they have higher body fat percentages. So going by a body fat percentage might be pretty deceiving. Fat is also protective of the body in a lot of ways, and it's a way to say, hey, I'm going to hold on to this for later. You know, we have taken that probably way too far in a lot of cases. I don't really know exactly. I guess, you know, what has happened in the last year or so, I think, is a good indication of, you know, how unhealthy our country is. Because when all this kind of started, when they started mentioning all these other countries and people were really upset with how the U.S. handled this particular problem. People were very upset, but I don't think that we could have handled it any other way, because I think that we are too sick. Like, we're already sick. You know, people are talking about comorbidities and all these different things. It's like, well, we already have a lot of those because of the food that we consume, and we don't move around as much as we need to. So I don't know if any measures would have assisted or helped unless we just maybe didn't move at all and stayed like literally locked inside our homes, perhaps. But I just think that many of us were very vulnerable because of what you're kind of mentioning, the family outing, where everyone just thinks it's pretty innocent to have some chips. But is it? It's not. It's literally not. Like, I hate to be that person that's like, hey, we can't do this, but you can't do that and get away with it. No one gets away with it. Oh, it's fine for the kids. No. No. It's the worst for the kids. If you want to be an adult and you want to be in your 40s, 50s, whatever, and you want to make decisions to have some drinks and eat some food that you find is really enjoyable, then that's great. But to kind of feed your kids stuff that you know that could potentially lead to them being pre-diabetic, or it could lead to just them being like, I mean, you just don't want your kid to stick out like a sore thumb. You know, you're kind of hoping that your kid isn't like super skinny. You're kind of hoping your kid's not super fat. You're kind of hoping that your kid's not like one way or the other too much, so that they can just be kind of at least a little bit comfortable in their own skin. It's fucking hard being a kid as it is, and to be the fat kid in your class or something like that it's a horrible thing.
Let me ask you this real quick about the note on kids, right? How, as a parent, do you like teach your kid? Because you like, there's if you never let your kid have that, they get out of the house and they're like, I'm gonna eat all the cookies and all, like they're gonna just go crazy on it, and maybe they'll gain a bunch of weight because they never understood how to just be normal with it. So how do you teach your kid how, because they're gonna be around this extremely palatable, sugary thing that they want to eat more and more and more of. How do you teach them that so that when they become an adult, like, they don't go crazy with it? It's just like anything else. It's like they're gonna try to discover it, but can they navigate that like world in a healthy way?
Yeah. I'll go first, and then you can crush it, Mark, because a lot of the stuff that I do now is I've learned from Mark. But all we've ever tried to do is just to make an emphasis on protein. With Jasmine. Yeah. And so she understands, like, she can look at a plate and she can tell you what's what. She won't be able to say like how much fat a steak has, but she knows, like, that's my protein source. Everything else is my carbs. She's not going to know macros or anything like that. So that's just always there. I'm like, hey, like what protein have you had today? And she'll know if she's done good or, well, if she's eaten something good or bad. Yeah. And she will, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Like, I'll make a point to, if she has pancakes with eggs, that she'll make sure she eats all the eggs. And then if she gets through half of the pancake, then that's cool. It's a win, versus the opposite, which in my opinion would be a loss for us. The other thing is giving her much better options. We were just talking about Coke Zero. I know some people will say, like, artificial sweeteners are going to be bad for your kids because it leads to X, Y, and Z. But like, she will be handed a full sugary drink, which we can all agree is probably not the best thing. And she will say no, because I have Coke Zeros at home. And, like, that's a huge win. Same thing with regular traditional ice cream. She will say no because she knows I'm going to make a gigantic, protein ice cream. And again, same thing, like, it does have some artificial sweeteners and stuff, but at least she knows, and she's very aware of, like, okay, like, let's see, we had, mac and cheese or whatever, if she's like at a friend's house or a cousin's house, I should say. And it's like, okay, well, what protein? I didn't have protein. Okay, for lunch, it's like, oh, we're going to have whatever, donuts. We'll just go way over the top. She will understand that, like, like, that's probably not the best thing. She might still eat it, but at least she knows. Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, she's going to make her decisions regardless, but she at least is aware, like, man, I didn't have any protein today. Like, I'm a little bit behind. So That's been
huge.
good. And like I said, just her being able to say no to things that's like me as a kid, I would be like, hell yeah, give me that soda. And now she's like, no, I'm going to go ahead and pass because I have a better option at home.
Yeah.
If your kids are already like, a little bit grown up, then options is your best thing. Like present them with good options. I hear parents say all the time, oh, my kid doesn't like to get out of the house. And it's like, well, just try to give them good options and maybe they'll want to get out of the house. You pop in their room and say, hey, you want to go see some live music tonight? Yeah, that takes a lot of effort. You gotta, like, that takes some planning. You gotta figure out, like, what kind of place is this? Like, if I'm going to take them out at night, is it like a bar? Like, I can't just take my 7-year-old kid to like a bar, it's weird. So you gotta, like, you have to plan. You have to kind of always keep your eyes open for potential activities and things to do. And when it comes to food, you'll have to find options that like taste reasonable for them. And kids don't really like to see that stuff is diet this or diet that. They are very turned off by that for who knows why. Maybe because they're just used to like something tasting a certain way and they're like, whatever that thing is, it doesn't taste like this other thing that I have grown to love. So you have to, the diet stuff works. The diet drinks can work pretty well because they at least taste sweet and they at least are like on par enough. I buy a lot of those Fairlife drinks for my kids, those little shots of milk that are just extra protein, but more affordable stuff could be fruits, vegetables. Kids usually love fruit. Most kids really, really enjoy fruit. Most kids like yogurt. Yogurt can be riddled with quite a bit of sugar, so just maybe just watching what kind of yogurt that you buy. You don't have to buy plain yogurt. Your kid will kill you. But just like reasonable amounts and communicating with your children about what's reasonable and communicating to them about what could potentially happen when you eat these foods, just educating them, letting them know, and using other family members and saying, hey, Uncle so-and-so, like he has diabetes and he has to prick his finger every day and he has to take medication and he's very sick. You're not trying to make fun of anybody. You're not trying to out anybody, but you're simply just pointing out what's around. I've done that with my children when it comes to drugs, when it comes to alcohol, when it comes to family members being heavy. My mom died from being obese. So it's like I have stuff around me to where I can say, your grandmother died, maybe 20 years earlier than she should have because she really struggled with her nutrition, struggled with her diet. And so, and not only did she struggle with her, or not only did she die young, but she also had like about 8 or 9 years that were kind of shitty where she just couldn't get around the same way. And they all saw that. And so it's like, here's an example, but you can point that out if you don't have a family member like that, when you go to the grocery store. I mean, you're not pointing at anybody, but you're seeing these people that are, using their walker and they're 50. Like, that's not normal. Like, you should not need that. Like, I have compassion for those people because my mom was one of them. But at the same time, people have to take responsibility for themselves. And we need to continue to educate people on, what are some decent options in terms of your food. I like your idea of adding protein. Like, we're gonna mainly get protein. We're gonna add, like, we're not taking. You don't even mention if you do take anything away. It's just like, oh, there's more vegetables around. Oh, there's more fruit around, or there's a lot of options nowadays for healthy snacks. My son takes like beef jerky with him to school all the time. He happens to really like that. Like, what do your kids like that are decent options? That are healthier options than maybe what they currently do.
Yeah. And then also, like, we, I've been making a lot of Piedmontese with, it's just like a bag of frozen stir fry vegetables from Costco.
Ooh.
It's really, really good. Yeah. And, sometimes my daughter will put soy sauce on her rice. It's like, that's not hurting literally anything, but it's funny. The other day, she just reached for like the coconut aminos instead of soy sauce.
Coconut aminos?
Yeah, it's just like a different, like,
it's an alternative.
Yeah, there you go. It's an alternative to like traditional soy sauce, which I don't really think there's too much wrong with soy sauce, period.
Right.
But I'm just like, do you like that? And she's like, yeah. Like, what? She didn't even care. And it's like, you know, I could definitely like no, you shouldn't put that much, or you shouldn't do like no, like fuck it, like just do whatever you want. Just make sure you are eating that whole steak, you know. And that's usually never a problem. She actually, yeah, she crushes Piedmontese. It's great. But yeah, like kind of being okay with like, you know, the ice cream I make her, like mine will be plain, and I'll be like, hey, do you want to throw like some Fruity Pebbles on top? Like, it's no big deal. I know Mark's talked about like French toast in the past. Like, what's the harm in that? Like, there is none. Benjamin Bickman talking about making crepes.
Yeah.
You know, he's just like, yeah, I'll throw Nutella on there, but as long as they eat, you know, like for every one they eat, they're getting 2 eggs or whatever it was. And it's like, yeah, dude, I think so like I've said it before, like sneaking more protein in your diet, like you can easily do that for your kids too, you know, just doing simple things like that.
Every parent has to investigate nutrition.
Yeah.
They need to know about nutrition. It impacts everything. I mean, imagine if you wanted to send your kid to a private school because you're like, I'm going to get them the best education possible. Then the kid eats junk. The kid has interrupted sleep. The kid has behavioral problems. The kid has ADHD and everything else under the sun. A lot of these things can be, I'm not saying they're directly connected to your food, but it's my belief that these things are connected largely to your food and largely to your sleep. Teenagers especially have disrupted sleep, maybe even worse than anybody, and they need to sleep more. Yes. They have to sleep like 2 or 3 hours more, and they have to get up at, you know, for school at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. to be there at 7 or 8 or whatever the time is. It's just a goddamn nightmare. But like, imagine being a parent and you're thinking you're doing the best thing for your child by like, hey, I'm going to send them to this school, and I want my kid to be super smart. Well, if you want your kid to be super smart, you're going to have to feed him proper nutrition. I'm not saying that you can't be smart without it. I'm just saying that a lot of these things can impact your sleep. Your sleep can impact your learning. You know, it's just, parents have to learn. They have to learn about nutrition. I mean, they always say that kids don't come with like an instruction manual. Well, an instruction manual, in my opinion, to having a child would be to have a book on nutrition, because how to feed your kids, how to nourish them is your fucking job. It's your job to keep your kids safe. Like, that's what your job is. You're not going to let them play out in the fucking middle of the street, you know, so you shouldn't let them have 2 bowls of ice cream every day. You know, you should be paying attention. These things are like, they're really important. So learn about nutrition. Maybe try to apply the nutrition yourself, because if your kid's seeing you, they see you doing that. Nutrition is just part of stuff. And you, at the dinner table, you ask the wife, say, hey, how was swimming today? You know, and you start talking about these things like, hey, how was your walk? How was lifting? How was, you know, exercise is like incorporated. Eating is hey, what'd you have for breakfast today? Oh, I had 3 eggs. I had it's very normal. There's nothing abnormal. You know, and in Nsima's house, it would be like, Dad, how much liver did you have today? How much sheep balls did you eat this afternoon?
All right, bro. We never ate sheep balls. I don't know what like, people are gonna believe.
I just
that
got
shit.
excited. I
got excited. Liver was a thing though in the household. Now, but the
goat heads.
Goat heads. Yeah, we did fuck with goat heads and fish heads and shit. But this is like, I think this is awesome because it does all come down to education. When you have an understanding about something, it's hard. Not that you won't, but it's hard to make the wrong decision. Like when you understand. Let's talk drugs real quick. When you know what excessive weed can do to you, you then find it harder to want to abuse it, no matter how good it feels to smoke it. No matter how, if you have an education on what excessive food does to you over time, and making the choices to eat highly palatable foods and how that can lead you, even though in the moment it might not be bad, but it can lead you to have more actions that lead you to eating more of that food and gaining unnecessary body fat, you then know that, I might not even eat it right now, but if I eat it right now, I need to be careful for the next few days. And then you can also go and you can teach your kids that. Like, that's the thing. That's why I asked you guys, because I'm just like, these kids can't go through life thinking that these foods are necessarily like they can never eat it or something horrible is going to happen. But if they can have that understanding that I can have a donut right now with the homies, but I'm not going to eat excessive amounts of this over time, and I'm going to be healthy if I do that. If they can have that layered understanding, then they can, like, if you're the party or whatever,
Mhm.
I guarantee that if you're able to educate them on it rather than like maybe demonizing it, but telling them what it could do,
Mhm.
they would be more wary about having all of that type of stuff at a family gathering.
Yeah.
You know?
And the amazing, so like just to wrap up that party, I made a like a fruit dip thing, but it was it was like a manipulation of Remington James's. He has like it's like an Oreo cheesecake bite thing,
Yeah.
and so I just made like the filling, and I used that. So it was like, I mean, the whole thing. It was a big old bucket. Like the whole thing was like 1,000 calories. But every person had like a little, like, like plastic bowl full.
Mhm.
And I'm like, that's like the highest protein thing that's here right now. Cause it's just full of protein. Cause it's like Greek yogurt and like protein powder and a couple other things.
Yeah.
But I was like kind of nervous cause I'm like, oh shit. Anything we bring, everyone's like, oh, that's definitely healthy. Like that's the healthy thing. I'm like, no, it's just dessert. Cause if I feel like whenever I tell somebody something's like, oh, it's good and it's good for you, they're just automatically shut off.
Yeah.
Here's another thing
But
about
everyone loved it. It was great.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
No, I think that's great that you do that.
Yeah, I
Like,
do it all
that's-
the time.
Yeah, you're always bringing healthy. That's the smartest thing to do. I mean, I think
Mhm.
if you like diet drinks, like when you show up at a party, bring a bunch of diet drinks.
Yeah.
I do that as well.
You might be the only one drinking them, but so what?
I
you know?
was the second one.
I-
There was one other person.
I think that parents need to also like when your kid is like a child, very young, you're the one that feeds them. So feed them good stuff.
Mhm.
The majority of the time, there's really not a lot of reasons to feed a kid that can't talk anything other than stuff that's nutritious for him.
Oh yeah.
It's like he can't fucking say anything yet. Like just give him what he needs. Don't worry about giving him shit that you might think that he likes or that you might think that he wants. I mean, there's just no. It's just completely unnecessary. I mean, it can be fun or funny to like see like, oh, what's he gonna do with the cake, and the kid jams the cake all on his face and stuff like that. You get some pictures, but that's like
Mhm.
Birthday thing or something. But the kids don't need to they don't need to be exposed to that at such a young age. I mean, this is a weird analogy, but it's like being exposed to porn at like a really young age. It's too much excitement for you. Your brain can't handle any of that stuff.
I was
Like,
like,
yeah, you just don't need that. Like
Mhm.
at that young of an age. So parents, in the example that you're laying out with the chips and stuff, if the chips just aren't there, I'm not saying you can't have them, and I'm not saying to demonize them because that's awful too. But if they're just not there, they won't be eaten.
Correct.
You're cooking a bunch of food, like you're at a barbecue, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's put out other stuff. And I know that like vegetables and fruit and shit like that won't be as entertaining, but like,
Yeah.
just put out, oh, we got Nsima.
I remembered something. Keep going.
Oh, God. We broke them again.
Put out some other stuff. And like, you don't actually need any food because you're cooking the main food.
Yeah.
It's coming. And kids that want to bitch and complain, let them do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just fight that fight because it's worth it.
It's totally worth it.
Yeah, what are they going to do? They're going to complain. They're going to say, I didn't have any dinner. And then you could just tell them, hey, go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Let me tell you all this real quick. All right. Number one, preface. Within like African culture and honestly all other foreign cultures, like giving your kid a good spanking is not a problem.
Mhm.
And I was spanked a lot as a kid. All right. I don't have any problem with it. I don't look back at it and like, So before I tell this story, I need you to understand I am not hurt. Okay. Now, when I was a kid, I told y'all my mom didn't have soda in the house. We were not allowed to drink soda. That shit, no, it's not healthy. You don't drink soda. But when I was younger, she had me enrolled in some of these college classes to like play piano and shit. I was like 8 or 9 at the time. So there was a class party, right? And they brought chips, they brought all these things, and they brought soda. My mom took this class with me, by the way. Like we were both learning piano in the class. She took it with me. So, the teacher has everything, and the teacher comes up to me because she sees me sitting there by my mom. She's like, oh, Nsima, would you like to go up and get some food? Maybe you want a soda? I was like, looked at my mom, and mom's like, would you like a soda? I was like, yes. She's like, go ahead. I got the soda. I got the Pepsi. Came back, was drinking my Pepsi. So good, right? Eating food. And she's like just sitting there, just smiling. Everything's cool. We drive home. We get home. She's like, So you think you're gonna go drink some soda? You think you're gonna say yes to drinking a soda in this class? You know what? I was like, Mom, but you said like what I meant. She spanked me.
She was like,
That's
wait
great.
till we get home.
She's like, wait till we get home. You think that shit? I'm not
That's
telling you I'm
brutal.
spanking kids, but it's just like
brutality.
it's not brutality, yo. Like it was not brutality, but it's just like, yo, like
That's
no,
so
like
funny.
I knew, I don't fuck with sodas. Like every time I look at the Pepsi, I'm just like, nah, I'm good, man.
That's funny. I mean, it worked
Hey, at least
out.
she told you that it's not healthy. Like a
Yeah.
lot of times,
Yeah.
parents they
shit.
won't explain anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, it's just not for kids, and they're
Yeah.
like, well, why the fuck do you drink it all the time?
She
I was just
didn't.
gonna say,
She
yeah,
didn't.
if she had one in her hand,
She didn't have a
as she's-
soda in her hand. She
you
drank
know?
water, but she like, she,
But you ate what she ate most of the time, probably.
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
That's
So
crazy.
I just thought that was so funny.
Yeah, but what you were talking about earlier, you know, like the food was incredible. My brother-in-law was he just making some tacos. You know, it was like already marinated meat, so and he has like the whole griddle set up. It's just amazing. And I'm thinking the whole time, like, damn, like those Lays are taking flavor away from like this amazing dinner that we're about to have.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you know, that wasn't the time nor the place to stand up on one of the tables and explain, you know, what's happening to them right now.
Yeah.
You know, to be like, you're taking away from your dinner. You're spoiling your dinner. I was gonna sound like the oldest person there,
Yeah.
but
And
it's
like,
frustrating, you know.
yeah. And it does all come back to education because, like, I think at the beginning we were talking about, like, you know, a person being 25% body fat or whatever, 25% body fat being healthy, right? Like, yeah, they can be healthy. This can be a person that chooses to go out and maybe have some pizza or whatever at the end of the week. They're not super lean. They're not really fat or anything. They're just like, they're living a healthy lifestyle, maybe working out twice a week, playing, I don't know, some random sports with some friends or whatever, but like not super into fitness, but living in a healthy fashion. That can be done.
Yeah.
It's just, I think if an individual is going to be able to do that successfully, they absolutely need the knowledge of it all so that they don't have any guilt when they have a donut, even though they know I don't really need this, but right now it's cool and it's not good for me. Like, that's the thing I think that's rough with flexible dieting. When people talk about it and they teach flexible dieting and if it fits your macros, some people are like, yeah, this fits your macros. It's not unhealthy. Like, it actually is unhealthy. And it does fit your macros. Like, let's not try to mix it up. Let's not try to say the pizza is actually healthy or the donut's actually healthy or the massive amounts of sugar in the peanut butter is actually healthy just because it fits your macros. It's not healthy.
Plant protein, bro.
Right? It's
See?
not healthy. Like, understand you're intaking something unhealthy, even though it fits your macros, but that doesn't make the food good for you.
Mm-hmm.
Mentally, maybe there could be some
Yeah.
help there, but it's not good for you.
Yeah, I think that's where like I will step in and like try to educate on like the lower calorie version of things. I did it poorly recently, but that was just because I just got frustrated. But that's where I will say like why are you gonna add all this crazy ass dressing to your healthy salad? Like, that makes no sense. Your salad now, you know, cost more calorically than like my whole meal.
Yeah.
And then it's like, but no, it's a salad. Like, well, yes, but you know, let's think about the calories. And that's, you know, obviously we're not talking about kids anymore, but that's where the education again just comes back to them just simply not knowing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you think about all the different options that you have in terms of like eating less, you know, there's so many different diets that you can try. There's a ketogenic style diet, which normally has you reducing your overall calories because you're cutting out macronutrient. You have things like protein leveraging, where you learn to eat more protein because protein's the most satiating. It can help keep you full. You can eat like protein and vegetables because vegetables don't really cost you a whole lot in terms of their caloric impact. And they help fill you up and they provide bulk and fiber for your stomach. There's just a lot of options. You can count calories. You can just kind of do more what Nsima and I do, where you just weigh yourself, look at yourself in the mirror, kind of do an assessment, say, all right, well, you know, this is going good this way, or I need to eat more, I need to eat less, and you can kind of, you know, learn how to do it that way. But there's a lot of options, and when we're talking about kind of your health span, one of the healthiest things you can do is to figure out how to go through each and every day without overeating. That's like one of the one of the key ingredients. And if you listen to anybody that talks, well, not anybody, but if you listen to most people that talk about nutrition, except for Robert Lustig, they'll kind of point out to a lot of the studies that have been done on humans and animals, and even like worms and shit like that. When they live a life where they are mainly just not over consuming calories, they live longer lives. So like that's one of the simplest things. Should you go for a walk? Should you go for a run? Should you lift some weights? If those things interest you, yeah, they would be great. And it would be great if you had a handful of things that you liked that were healthy for you in terms of maybe being able to increase your metabolic output, and also gaining muscle mass. I think is really, really critical. The damage of things like diabetes, it first happens in your muscle cells. Like that's where insulin resistance occurs, is in your muscle cells. And so the more muscle cells, the more muscle cells that you have, the less likely you're going to be to suffer from some of those things. So if you have a little bit of muscle on your body, which would take, I don't know, let's just go total minimum, say 2 workouts that are 30, 40 minutes, of lifting per week. You can go around at whatever like is reasonable within your, like everyone should know like their fighting weight. Like what's your weight? There may be some individuals that got behind when they were young and got really heavy when they were young, and so maybe they don't even know what their fighting weight is. But how tall are you? Are you 6 foot? Are you 5'3"? Like there's some references that you can look at. Like you don't necessarily need to like live up to those standards and be those body weights. But, for someone that's 5'7", I would say like it's reasonable to be like, if you're 300 pounds, it's very reasonable to be 220 or 200. And that might still look a little bit larger than what's maybe recommended for that height. But I think you'll be totally fine. The thing is just, wherever you're at now, the goal should be to take things, one day at a time, 1 week at a time, 1 month at a time. But really, even beyond that, it's like one bite at a time. It's one meal at a time. Don't be upset and depressed and pissed off and confused and whatever else you want to be towards yourself, or embarrassed that you're heavy. Just think, all right, well, all I got to do is I got to do stuff about this every single day. And it's going to start with however many meals you have every day. You're going to try to make sure that they are in line with whatever it is that your goal is. Write the goal down, have an aim, and just losing weight. We get caught up in so many different things. The simple act of losing weight, losing body fat, you want to, I think it's wise to make sure they're not losing muscle mass, because that's harmful. You want to make sure you're losing body fat, but the simple act of losing body fat can be very healthy. It can also be detrimental, as we were talking about earlier, when you're getting super lean, and so you might be cautious about how kind of carried away you get with that. And we've mentioned many times in the show, you might want to do all this in stages. If you're 400 pounds and you're trying to come down to something that you think is more reasonable, maybe you go from 400 to 370, and you stay at 370 for a bit, and you go to 350, and so on. As I was coming down from 330, it took me a long time. To get down to where I'm at. I think the whole process really took about 6 years. I always tell people it took a decade, because it took a decade to be able to just sort of prevent myself from having some of the same bad habits. I still had a lot of the same bad habits, but I was still able to lose weight just from pure will, and just forcing myself to train enough to I guess outwit my cheat meals and things like that here and there.
Real quick, Nsima. Well, let me see the name. Just shout out Kim Clark. She says, Mark, you're one of her heroes.
Oh, thank you, Kim.
That's special.
Yeah.
And she left some hearts. Go ahead, Nsima. Sorry.
No, you're good, bro. I was gonna say, somehow we got to make because as far as transformations are concerned, Like it's like, you know, the 8-week challenge, the 12-week challenge. And those are great, awesome things to get people on the boat or to get people on the wagon. But I think when people look at like 8-week challenge, 12-week challenge or whatever, there's some people who really believe that in the next 12 weeks of hard work or in the next, whatever, 20 weeks of hard work, I'm going to have that body that I've been wanting. There's some people that truly like, and some people are able to do that. They have a good background and there's some knowledge there. But like, you know, how can we make the 2-year challenge or the fucking year challenge? How can we make that the sexy thing? Because at the end of the day, that's what it's typically going to be for a majority of the population. It's going to be, and after they get that body, there's still now all the habits needed to maintain said body and live that life.
I think that's what you're in the middle of right now with your jiu-jitsu experience, you know. But you said in the beginning, you were like, I would like to, you know, make a run at like getting to this point in 5 years, you know. And I don't think you would. I don't think you're going to be like, hey, I'm out of here, you know. At this point, you're so locked into what you're doing. It was just a goal. But I think that more long-term goals, I think, are great, but they still need to be. They just can't. You just got to be careful on how. Like, you were already fit going into it. You were already a capable human being of being able to be good at probably anything that's physical. You know, you can go into probably just about anything that's physical. Someone could teach you it. You can probably do a decent job at it, you know. But so you have to make sure that you are at least a little bit within striking distance of what it is, like where someone else can say, yeah, I could, okay, that's going to be more difficult than you might think, but yeah, I could see you doing that, you know. And I think when it comes to the weight loss stuff, I love it when I hear someone say, you know what, yeah, I've been working really hard, and this month I'm hoping that I get down about another 2 or 3 pounds. When they say something really low, I'm like, that guy fucking gets it. That guy understands it, because he knows that if he loses 10 this month and 10 the next month and 10 the next month and 10 the next month, yes, that might accumulate and that might equal 50 pounds. But how many times we've seen those people gain a lot of that weight back, you know? And for some people that are bigger, it may work that way for a bit, just kind of naturally. But for the most part, like, just really taking your time makes a lot of sense. Take us on out of here, Andrew. We've been talking for way too long.
That's Nsima's
fault.
That is. The mind bullet kicked in. Are you going to shoot it? Because I set up one camera so that way we can see if it goes in.
Shot clock?
No, I'm not finished with this one. I'm saving this for the next
episode.
A rainy day?
Yes.
Next episode. That might be happening in a couple minutes. Piedmontese.com, PIEDMONTESE.com. At checkout, enter promo code Power Project for 25% off your order. Make sure you guys hit them up for the absolute best steaks in the universe. Links will be down in the YouTube description, as well as the podcast show notes. Podcast newsletter, some new hotness from Mark Bell. Fat loss for fat dummies. So, yeah, definitely stuff we can't say on Facebook anymore because you get banned for saying fat.
Real quick.
Sign up for that if you have not done so already. You'll get a bunch of awesome emails from us fired right at you really quick, and then any future newsletters that we have coming out. My Instagram and Twitter is at @IamAndrewZ, and your boy is on TikTok now. I've been focusing on the podcast TikTok, so now I'm trying to do my own personal thing on there. It's at the Andrew Z. Yeah, at the Andrew Z.
Wow,
Sorry,
Donald.
that's how new it is. Because somebody else took I Am Andrew Z, and I think it's a chick,
Bastard.
and I think it's like she has a man named Andrew, so it's like I Am Andrews. So I think that's the only thing I can think of, but yeah. And then definitely make sure you're following the podcast at Mark Bell's Power Project on Instagram, at MB Power Project on TikTok and Twitter. Nsima, where are you at?
At Nsima Inyang on Instagram and YouTube, at Nsima Yin Yang on TikTok and Twitter, Mark.
I'm at Mark Smelly Bell. Strength is never weakness, weakness never strength. Catch you guys later. Bye.